Hello, and welcome to Very Good Video Games. My name is Levi, I'm your host for today, and I'm joined once again by Scott and Dylan.
Hello.
Hello there.
So today we are talking about Neon White, developed by Angel Matrix and published by one of my all-time favorite publishers, Annapurna Interactive, known for games such as Outer Wilds, What Remains of Edith Finch, and Stray, another one of the games we played on the podcast. So before we go into the game, full spoilers ahead, so turn this off if you haven't played it yet, and let's start off with the conversation, guys.
Yeah, okay. What do you want to start with?
Well, like, off the top, what was your guys' initial impressions with the game? Because for me personally, like in the first opening half hour or so, I thought it was way too like anime tropey for me, especially coming off the heels of watching stuff like the cyberpunk anime and whatnot. Even though that anime is incredible, yeah, I just found so many of the characters to be kind of tropey at first. But
it was way too weeb ass shit for me. Like right off the bat, I almost feel like I even recognized the voice actor for Neon White.
Yeah.
The voice actor of Neon White was Steve Bloom, who is Spike Spiegel in Cowboy Bebop and in every other anime as well.
Oh,
but
that
he
totally
does,
was.
He does pretty much precisely one voice that you'll recognize in everything he's in.
That is so funny. Yeah, I recognized the voice, but I couldn't put my finger on who it was. But it's totally it's totally Spike.
And maybe that almost added to like, oh man, they're trying to make this character cool, but he kind of is. But at the same time, I don't know. They were having fun with the game. I know that, but I don't know. I couldn't care about any of the characters really.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because it's something I've noticed graphically as well. So all of us three were playing a lot of Valheim about a year ago, and we noticed that game's graphical style is a lot like old school RuneScape. And I remember saying at the time, "Oh, I never thought this graphical style would be kind of nostalgic and actually its own style." Because when it was out back then, it's like, oh, like PS1 RuneScape style graphics, those just suck, and they'd do something better if they could.
Mm-hmm.
This, I feel, with Neon White is like taking the old school cringy anime tropes and just deliberately using all of them at once for its own style. I kind of enjoyed it, but like I knew going into it that it was going to be exquisite cringe constantly through this game.
Yeah,
I will say that they definitely leaned into those tropes a lot, and as much as like I don't know, sometimes the writing felt too try hard, but sometimes it did make me genuinely laugh.
Yeah.
Particularly the himbo energy of Yellow.
Yeah.
Himbo? What is a himbo?
The male version of a bimbo, but for some reason the himbo stereotype is a little bit more accepted. For some reason, it's one of those bullshit gender double standards.
Yeah.
A good example of a himbo actually that everyone loves is Jason from The Good Place.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. That's a good comparison.
The much better example I would put out is Kronk from Emperor's New Groove.
Okay. I guess we should go into the characters because, like I was saying, my initial impression of them was super just like anime tropey. But as the story evolved and you actually got to know the characters more, and like they had their character arcs, well, at least some of them did. I actually ended up like really liking them a lot.
R.I.P. Yellow.
I know that's what I was alluding to. Yellow ends up dying like pretty early. I thought I wasn't expecting him to die off that quick, even though the whole premise of the game is like it's almost like a battle royale for neons they're all fighting for the top spot and to have their place be saved in heaven or something for a year.
Yeah, basically whoever has the highest neon rank is allowed to stay in heaven and do the believers' dirty work or something. It's a really loose story for what obviously is just meant to be a fun speedrunning game. I will say that I have not played a lot of games that use the visual novel style for the dialogue and the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, obviously, the more popular games that use this dialogue style of having the characters back and forth written underneath, even sometimes voice acted out, would be like Fire Emblem.
Yeah.
And I don't play a lot of Fire Emblem games. I've only ever played like the Game Boy one years ago. And another game in this style is The World Ends With You, which was on the DS, and I played
Okay.
it on the Switch. And
Yeah.
it's very much similar where I'm like, man, God, I just don't give a fuck about what these people are talking about. But sometimes the writing is kind of clever and funny and referential of like modern culture. The gameplay is where it shines. And then you're back to this boring story of whatever kind of thing. Actually, The World Ends With You is funny because you have to compete against other people and nobody is allowed to like there's only one winner.
Right. Actually, and isn't it like a afterlife kind of?
It's also in the
thing as well?
afterlife, but it's in the afterlife setting in the really famous Tokyo area. I can't remember what it's called.
That is heaven, is just Tokyo.
No, it's anyway. I'm talking about a different game now.
Yeah,
basically.
that's a different game.
Yeah, but I'm just saying I've never really played a lot of games that are like this one, where it feels so disconnected from the gameplay and the story.
Mm-hmm. Talking about anime tropes, though, like I feel like not only are the characters kind of very similar to anime style characters, but the gameplay itself of the dialogue part, like when you're in Central Heaven, is very similar to something like, say, Persona 5 or Persona games in general, or the latest Fire Emblem game, Three Houses, when there's like sections where you're going and focusing on developing these relationships with all the characters in the game. And I haven't played a game like that yet, but because of that, I found it like a little jarring at first. I didn't really care for it either, like you were saying, Scott. But over time, it really did grow on me. I can see the appeal for more of that deep style of gameplay, like in games like Persona 5, where there's a lot more choice when it comes to each character. I feel like this one was very linear.
I felt when I started playing the game that right off the bat, I mean, we're going to go into this for, I feel, most of the podcast, but the gameplay was so good. And then it would kind of come screeching to a halt when you got into the overworld heaven, where it's like, okay, it's like, I kind of want to progress the story, but also like, I got to give the gift to this person. I got to go through the dialogue. And it's like, fuck, it's going to take like 20 minutes to get through.
And each time you give someone a gift, it has to play the same dialogue that they said at the first time. Like,
no, not just that. It also has to show the same gift giving animation every single time.
Yeah.
And it takes like 5 to 8 seconds of my precious life away that I won't get back.
In this game, 8 seconds is everything, man.
8 milliseconds, man. 8 milliseconds is precious time.
Oh, buddy. When you manage to get like 8,000ths of a second off, whew.
Yeah. Especially when you have like those friendship leaderboards that you can see your other friends, like what their time was for each level.
Yes. So I noticed that in my first playthrough, and I'm just like, oh, okay. So I'm definitely going to try and beat Dylan's time on this. And then, as you know, we were playing through my theme. So I went offline for you guys to play. And then Dylan texted me saying, hey, thank you for going offline, but I can't see your times now. And I just kind of gave him a little wink because I'm just like, that's too bad. You're just going to have to do as good as you can.
Yeah. So what basically happened was, I think me and Levi started playing first. So for most of the game, I was seeing Levi's times and usually beating it. I got the feeling that Levi was playing just to beat the level mostly and like kind of get a decent time, but not really optimizing from what I could see.
Yeah.
And then I went back and saw the times that Scott was getting. And I was like, okay, so Scott is going to get the best times. Like, I'm fine with that. But then I saw one level that was like half the time that me and Levi got. I'm like, how the fuck did Scott get that? It's like, I got to go back and play this.
Okay, so yes, this was the problem in the first 2 missions, I guess they're called. I think it was in the first or the second. I got a red medal, and I was like confused on what it was. So there's the ace medal. So there's an ace medal, which is like the fastest medal that you can get, right?
Yeah.
But the red medal, I found out, is like even faster. It's like you literally have to like optimize everything to like a fucking T, right?
Oh man,
and
I did not get one at all.
So I got it by accident and I was like, what is this exactly? So I went back and like replayed the first 2 missions trying to just optimize everything. And I realized I was just wasting so much time trying to cut off like seconds here and there. And there was like all these little tricks in certain levels where it's just like, holy shit, I can skip entire sections.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's the fun of it, is really in optimizing it, and it's a total speedrunners game. That being said, I, like Dylan was alluding to, I did not fully do that. I did it for a couple levels, but especially when I saw Dylan's times, and it kind of spurred the spirit of competitiveness in me. And I was like, okay, I got to beat Dylan's time now. I got to beat it. And so I'd spend a little bit of time on optimizing, but no, I didn't focus on it too much because I had to beat the game.
Yeah, and that was the other thing, because of like just the fact that I started Wednesday and I was busy on Friday and Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, okay, I just got to focus on maybe just clearing the game, getting all the gifts and the ace medals, because that was within reason. Because getting the red medals is like really difficult.
Oh yeah, that's like full blown speedrunner mode. Like you're saying, fully optimized all of your movements and everything. And
I went back afterwards and just was like, I'm gonna try doing like the last 2 levels, and I was like, holy shit, like I'm like looking at my times and I'm just like, I'm like destroying my old times. Like
the last 2 levels in the entire game.
Yeah, it was just, I just wanted to randomly try those ones because they're quite a bit longer than the rest of the levels throughout the game.
Yeah, I was starting to notice, especially the last 2 to 3 missions. Like, yeah, the run times of the levels were getting up into like the minute or 2 minute marks, or even 3 in some. And they're way more like open, it felt.
For some reason, the longer ones felt so much more fun because you had to be so perfect for that much longer. Instead of stopping and going to a different level, it's just one long level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my experience with it is I got the ace medal. I'm like, okay, I got it. I feel like I could have done better with that. So for me, it kind of got the hooks in me, where even if I got the like best medal in air quotes that you're told to get, it sort of gradually encourages you, like, you can do better. Come on, you can shave a little bit of time off it. You didn't move perfectly. And I think the game design is actually quite clever in that it's balanced on like, okay, to progress the game, you just need a certain number of gold medals. You don't even need that many to get to the final levels. So most casual players could reasonably beat it. And then for most players of like a normal skill set, they can get the ace medal and like 100% the game. And there's still that incentive, even if you don't necessarily know about the red medals, to just keep going and keep trying to shave the times off.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the design is that you're supposed to eventually get a red medal by accident, like Scott did, and just be like, oh my God, they're in every level. I gotta go back and play them all.
There's an extra layer to unlock.
There's a whole extra layer that like I said, basically the first, second mission, and the last mission, I've optimized as best as I can. I don't think I could do it any better. So I'm actually curious. I kind of want to go see our times now and stuff and like see how we compare.
Yeah, I would
a little bit.
I would definitely come in last place amongst the 3 of us as far as speed goes, but
not necessarily on all of them though, because there was ones where it's like as soon as I got an ace, I know that I could go like 5 seconds faster on some of them. I was like, whatever, I'm moving on.
Yeah.
So not all of them, but
yeah.
I
feel like there is like a reasonable limit to being like, it's like time spent on a level optimizing it, and you being like, okay, this is fun, but I do need to continue with the actual game itself. Unless you make this game your main speedrunning game, if you have one in general. But
I am absolutely going back and playing this game more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I definitely want to go back, and I mean, at the end of the game, you unlock speedrun mode for each characters, like stuff.
Something like Hell Run mode or something, or
Heaven Rush and Hell Rush or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's basically just continuous gameplay. You don't stop or anything. And I think it counts the time overall instead of just individual levels. So I think I kind of want to go do that as well.
Yeah. Lots of post game stuff to do here.
Yeah, for sure.
Really good. I'm curious if they use the same levels from the main story and then just kind of remix them, or just get you to play them in all in succession, or do you know?
So you can do it. I already looked at it. You can do it in succession from, if there's 10 levels in a mission, it'll be 1 through 10, but it'll include all the missions, I think. So 1 through 100 or however many levels there are.
Right.
You'd have to go through all of those for Neon White's stuff, and then there was a one for Violet, Yellow, Red, where it's like you would do those continuously. But I also noticed one for Mikey, which I realize now is actually maybe the only character that I really cared about.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, what is your guys' favorite character at the end of the story? But
most likely Mikey, who everyone saw as a flaming Statue of Liberty, right? He kept being referred to as a cat. I was very confused by that.
Yeah, obviously the joke of that is that angels were being represented however people imagined them to look, I think, which I thought was kind of a funny little detail that they did with that.
Yeah, it's in like the eye of the beholder. I don't know if it's how they perceived angels specifically. It's just something about their personality influenced how they perceived angels. Because was it Yellow sees angels as John Cena or something like that?
Yes, dude, it was John Cena. Mikey specifically was John Cena.
Yeah.
And then the other one obviously being Gabby. She was also kind of funny. Just kind of the sassy secretary. Like,
yeah. Wow, Mr. White, welcome back. Kind of like Maz or whatever her name is from Monsters, Inc.
Yep. I think that's
character.
exactly what they're going for. Also, shout out to the Believers. I hated them so much, and I'm glad they all died.
oh splendid.
Yeah. they were written to be horrible people. Mikey was definitely my favorite character, and then with Raz being a close second, just because he's just such a chill psychiatrist of a bartender. Man, he's just so cool, just so chill. Something I loved about this game, though, was the movement of it, like the movement cards, the discard abilities for each weapon. Like Godspeed, rocket launcher, obviously at the end, the Book of Life ability. Like that, I've mentioned it before, but movement in video games is just something that really brings out the fun. And I was totally just enthralled with it in this game.
I agree, but I also want to throw out a statement there and see how you guys react to it. I think Neon White is the best example of an inherently bad genre, which is first-person platformers.
Yes, that's a good point.
So my feeling is that the movement was really fun, but first-person platforming, I think, inherently has a problem where you expect vestibular feedback from moving really quickly that you're just not getting if you're in first person in a video game. And actually the clever thing that Neon White did is that a lot of the game, you're not actually making contact with the ground, probably less than you would in, say, a third person platformer. Probably because like whenever you interact with the ground, it doesn't feel as good as like zooming through the air and like clicking on things, which is how most of the game works.
Yeah, I think that's part of by design too, because like it literally does feel slower when you're just running on the ground, just not jumping or using abilities, unless you're on like the waterways that would kind of give you a speed boost if you're contacted there. But
the water running was the one time on the ground that was actually fun. The other thing I felt was like, I think the movement was well optimized for the game where they were making. It still felt way too floaty at times. Like this doesn't feel great, even though it's like the best they can do for this game.
Yeah, one thing that I was annoyed with the game was there's no short hop. It's as soon as you press the jump button, you're going to get the same height and the same floatiness always, which was annoying in very particular areas where it's like you almost had to stop your momentum so that you wouldn't over jump something.
Yeah, especially near the end game, I was experiencing a lot of that, where there's that one demon that was like almost like a mine on the ground with all the directional inputs that if you landed in that area, it would shoot you in that direction. I felt there was a lot of times when it would shoot me in a direction and then I'd have to run for a little bit and jump before the next little directional launching demon would be in the way. And I felt like I had to stop in the air, and it really like broke up the movement. It made it feel less, it didn't feel good.
An even worse example is when you had to chain multiple ones of those, where you kind of feel like you just want to keep pressing forward. But if you do, you'll eventually, say on like the third one in a chain, will overshoot it and just fall off the edge. And it's like, it breaks the flow. Like
it does
didn't
break
feel great.
It does break the flow, but I guess that is kind of where you could have like the individual skill be expressed. Because if it were just perfectly lined up for you just to hold W or analog stick forward to keep moving, it would just kind of play itself at that point. So I guess I can see how they would choose not to do that.
I hope no one played this with a controller, because I don't know how you'd be able to fucking do anything.
Yeah, that's That's actually one of my points I was gonna make. Like, this game came out for PC and Nintendo Switch, and I cannot imagine playing this on the Switch just because of frame rates being a possible issue and controller controls.
At least the Switch has the motion controls option. I hope so, at least.
Yeah.
Because that would be the only saving grace on a console, would be the motion controls being able to snap from down to up as fast as you sometimes need to.
Which is still not optimal, I would say. Like, there's a lot of whipping your Switch around. You don't want to let it go by accident, just pulling it.
I mean, this is the risk of modern gaming, you know? I mean, Nintendos are dangerous. We've known this since 2006, man.
Oh, yeah. Especially with like VR gaming being a thing. I've seen so many videos of kids getting smacked, even before that, actually, with like the Wii and the Wiimotes, like people playing dance party games where they're swinging their arms around, just decking kids who are just at the right height just to get smoked by an adult.
Oh, what was everyone's favorite card to use? I think I'm gonna have to say Book of Life is like the greatest one because it's insanely fast.
Yeah, I mean, that one's obviously mine too, but I feel like that's a cheap one. I think it's designed.
That's a cheap, easy one to choose. I think the best one, in my opinion, if I had to just choose any, was the diversity with using the rocket launcher card.
Yeah, it had a different name, but yes, I was gonna.
Yeah,
say
they all had some, some sort of holy name, but that one was so good because you could do the rocket jump or the hook shot.
Yeah, it was the only one that had pretty much like 3 functions to it, because most of the other guns just have like the straight up fire mode or the discard movement ability. The rocket launcher had like just, you can fire the rocket as a means to do damage or to rocket jump.
Debatably, the purple machine gun also had 3 functions where you could either blow something up with the bomb or jump with the bomb.
That's true.
It's kind of equal almost. Actually, a good point. Did you guys realize that if you throw 2 down really quickly, you'll get a higher jump?
No, I didn't realize that.
I knew that because I had to figure out how that fucking level on the first mission, how Scott like have the time. And I honestly didn't even figure out. I saw Donkey's video where he actually does that. I'm like, oh my God, that's how you skip that level.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. Because I was so stumped. I'm like looking at the level, like, how can I cut off more time here? And it was just like, oh my God, I can literally just go right up straight.
That makes a lot of sense that the game would be programmed that way, though, because there's lots of segments where you have to use like the Uzi, like the downward smash ability to
the green card.
The green card, yeah, to the green card to migrate to a new location below you, and there would be like a bunch of red powder kegs that would explode you upwards when you like would hit them, and depending on how many there would be like, say, like one area that just had one powder keg that would just kind of boost you up a little bit, but there's some that like had like 5 in a like right in a close area, and then you would get shot super high in the air. So it does seem like that's not just programmed into those powder kegs. It might just be explosions in general that you can get height off of. That if you add more together, you get more height.
It's actually the same. It's basically just using momentum, because it's the same with the rocket launcher as well. The funny thing is that it was an accident because my mouse was doing a weird double click thing for a little bit while I was playing.
Oh.
So I just double clicked 2 down. I was like, whoa, I went so high. How did I do that? Actually, but though, one thing that you're kind of talking about is there's a little bit of like I think I even mentioned this in our very first episode about how every game sort of has this puzzle solving aspect to it. And I did love that about this, where it's like, where can I save like a second? Where can I just like cut a single corner or something where it just saves that much time, Because that level that Dylan is referencing, where I just cut like so much time out, I was finding other ways to go faster, but this one was the fastest. Yeah. So, but the other puzzle solving aspect of the game was finding all the gifts. I don't know if you guys found every single one.
Oh, no, I definitely didn't. Especially near the end, there's some levels where I could see the gift like up high and far away off the main track of the level, and I just could I didn't want to spend too much time really trying to crack the puzzle, but I just could not find out how to get to the certain spots.
I thought the gifts were actually a bit of a brilliant addition because it really so to back up a little bit, one thing I noticed about the design of the game is until the very end you didn't have to do things like really think about backtracking or even try to switch cards from the order you get them in. Find the gifts, you actually had to start thinking about either skipping parts or like saving abilities. Like, okay, I'm just going to shoot this guy instead of launching the bomb at him. So I
Mhm.
still have the card so I can do this thing later. I thought it was like really clever how it tasks you with, okay, how, given your start position, given the cards you can you get to this location? Finally, gifts was actually one of my favorite parts of the game, I think.
Yeah. Some of the nuance in the way the game would force you to change your playstyle from just the normal method of just running through the game the way they designed it, like the initial run through, like you're saying, like you get a card and then it would go to the top of your deck. So it's just like the main gun you have equipped already. Like having to switch my mind from having to push like the switch ability button to like say use a Godspeed, then switch over to like the purple bomb machine gun ability real quick, and then while it boosts me up in the air, quickly switch back to the Godspeed. Like that quick switch back, like was hard for me to get at first, but it is so much fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say some of the puzzle solving in this, you kind of have to take advantage of very specific level geometry where it's like just tiny little ledges on some levels you'd have to go across to get to a certain gift.
Yeah.
Because there was one I was just stumped on. I was like, how do I get this one? And it just took a while for me to be like, oh my God, this wall has the tiniest ledge here that I can just walk around on. It's not quicker. It's not meant to be like, oh, this is going to save you time. This is specifically to get to this gift.
Yeah. Some of it felt like you were breaking the game too, like getting out of bounds.
Yeah, it's actually the game it reminded me of was Talos Principle that I played years ago, where you kind of have to think outside the level's designs to find all of the game's secrets. So I had like that game in mind while I was exploring.
Jumping onto the sort of using the small ledge in a way that doesn't feel designed by the designer, even though it's clearly meant to be used that way. It feels almost like you're violating part of the spirit of the game by doing that sometimes, because like you get so used to running as fast as you can through the optimal route. The idea of slowing down and trying to tease out the design of the level feels at times like I shouldn't be doing this. Like I should be going faster.
It's almost sacrilegious.
Yes, exactly.
On the topic of the gifts and stuff, you use the gifts to unlock more dialogue and side quests from some of the more, like from the Neon characters at least. I think those are the only people you get side quests from. Did you guys have any particular side quests, like kind of character-based missions that you really did enjoy more than others, or any that stood out to you?
I liked the concept of yellows because you had to use only shooting mechanics.
Really? Okay.
But at the same time, I think violets were probably the best ones because they were designed to be very difficult. In fact, there was one that I was like, it was actually confusing because you actually have to just like jump off and go down somewhere. It was like, I was very confused by this very particular one where you have to kind of jump off the main level and you're like, oh, there's like stuff down here. It didn't look like that. You don't notice it at first glance though.
Yeah.
I think you know the one I'm talking about.
I think so. Yeah. Actually, I think it's one of Violet's first ones, if not even just the first one, where I was like, okay, these side quests are so much fun. They're kind of like a smaller bespoke levels, like that have a bit more like high speed challenges. I guess it must just be Vi's because each character seems to have like a specific type of side quest / level that is like catered to their character. Like you were mentioning with Yellow not being able to use the discard abilities. I actually really did not like Yellow's side quest levels specifically for that. I felt like I felt so cramped in what I could do. I felt like it's like, oh, this is just turning it into a shooter.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at with the reason why it's the best first-person platformer is that you're not doing much first-person platforming on the ground. That forces you to be on the ground more with that type of level.
Yeah, totally.
Unless you have a lot of exploding barrels. I was going to say, I really enjoyed Violet's levels, especially the one where you have to keep, it's the Idiot Island one, where you have to keep smashing downward and you have to count the floors or else you'll overshoot it.
Oh, yeah.
didn't really care for Red's levels, and I'm actually wondering what was her gimmick again, because it told you in the first one you do, and then I like forgot, and I couldn't tell if anything was different with that
Yeah,
one.
I can't remember either.
I thought Reds was you can't shoot. You have to use only discard abilities, which was why those ones were also pretty good.
Oh, I did not notice the difference. After a while, I was kind of like thinking to myself, like, Violets and Reds levels are just fun in general to me. I don't notice a difference between the two.
I guess with Reds, they just never gave you anything to shoot, so I forgot that it was a factor.
Yeah, yeah. So it almost makes it kind of a pointless addition to the character.
I guess, yeah. I just enjoyed the game in general though. It's funny because before we started this, I was playing some Doom Eternal.
Oh,
And it's funny because they're kind of similar in how they have all these different guns that do different abilities, and each gun has to be very specific in how you use it. So there's a similar vibe of being very particular in how you approach each encounter in Doom. That reminded me of how you have to approach each level in a very particular way. There's some room for experimentation, but you pretty much have to do things mostly by design. And there's something about the movement in Neon White that almost makes me wish there was more movement options in Doom Eternal.
Yeah. I can see
Again,
that.
a little different, but it was just an interesting side by side.
Yeah, I only ever played the Doom, I think 2016 remake, and that was something I kind of noticed as well, that like it's got faster, like kind of twitchy first person shooters, kind of more indicative of like the early first person shooter genre or like age of first person shooters. But I felt like it could have really leaned farther into movement. And like I keep saying that, but movement really is something that makes me have so much fun in games, especially if it's done really well.
In part, I think the reason why we're kind of starting to shit on Doom's movement is, funny enough, Doom is like really good in terms of movement compared to its contemporaries, which was mainly Call of Duty and to a certain extent Halo. And then now we're getting to the point where you have games like Neon White coming out that are so good in terms of their movement that we're looking back and it's like, oh, Doom Eternal isn't as good as it could have been. And it kind of makes you do weird things like grab onto walls for its movement that don't work as well in first person as it would in a third person game.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I was shitting on the movement in Doom Eternal. I'm just saying it could have had it could have had better movement options.
Oh, I was shitting on the movement. I actually didn't complete the remake of Doom.
Yeah, you said you didn't like it for some reason, and I think you're wrong, but
it's definitely a good game.
You're wrong.
I just didn't complete it, I felt I was more connected to the narrative of Doom, which is totally what it's not about.
Again, both of those games, I do not care what the story is, but the gameplay is goddamn brilliant.
Yeah. Actually, talking about collectibles and stuff and gifts, did you guys complete all of Neon Green's collectibles, like all of the coins?
Yes, I did.
I also did.
Okay. See, I just found the first one, and at that point I was near the end of the game and I was in a bit of a time crunch because I've been pretty busy recently. So I just had to, at that point I was truly just completing each level and moving on with it. And like maybe if I had an inkling that it would be easy to find each level's gift or get the platinum in the level easier, I would try it a couple times, but usually just steamrolling each level, getting whatever time I got in the first completion. So I was actually really curious to see what Green's like story was, like how it like got more completed by getting all of his little character moments through the coins. Like, is there anything that is really revealed to be substantial?
It's mostly what you get through the main story with a bit more detail. It does play up the homoerotic tension between White and Green a little bit more.
Yeah.
Particularly there's like a wrestling match where it's like, okay, guys, you're really leaning into this common trope of some sexual tension between the protagonist and antagonist, and they are very explicit about what they're doing with that.
Oh, okay.
Even if it's not explicitly a romantic relationship.
Right. Because, sorry, go ahead, Scott.
No, I actually wasn't going to say anything other than just it was hard for me to remember anything that was important to the story because it all just like was a big smear of like kind of, it's like the characters were just like were on repeat of who they were and how they acted, and nothing really, like there wasn't like a huge character arc for anyone, it felt like.
There's a little bit, but if more so for some characters, but I do know what you mean. Like every interaction that White had with Green it ended up with being like, with White being like, screw you, Green, I'll stop you now, here forever, shing, unsheathed sword, and then strikes at Green, and it's like, haha, boy, how you think you're really gonna beat me this time? It's like every interaction they had ended or started like that, and I was like, okay, you guys have done this like 3 or 4 times now, come on.
Yeah, I am more positive on the story than you two, I think. But I definitely agree that the characters are very archly drawn for the most part.
Hmm.
What I will give the story credit for is I think they did put some real effort into it. And there were aspects that I liked a fair bit where it showed a lot of thought. The one thing that I appreciated was the mechanic for why White is kind of special compared to the other neons, which is that he's not actually supposed to be there. He was pulled out by Red, and the mechanics of the world say that he should have actually floated back down to hell.
Yeah.
And then Red, because she forgave him, was able to pull him upwards. And because he actually had some regret about what he did in the past, he's able to effect change in the world. There was, I think, a lot of thought put into, say, the emphasis on forgiveness and what it means to forgive someone in the story. It wasn't necessarily like radical or like truly thought-provoking, but you got the sense the authors at least did put their effort into it. Like they really cared about the stuff they were doing, even though if, say, the humor doesn't always land, or if the characters, especially say Violet, were a bit repetitive in terms of re-saying their character motivation. There's at least effort put into the story is what I'll give it credit for.
Yeah, totally. And I did enjoy the narrative of it overall. I did find it took a little while for it to really get any character progression going. Most of it just happens really within the last hour or so of the game, and not even for all the characters. Like I feel like Green and Violet specifically have like, they don't grow at all as characters. Like especially Green, like even at the very end, like when you defeat him in the final boss battle, he starts climbing back up God's hand, and he's like, no, I'm not done yet, I'm still evil. I want to destroy everything. And you're like, okay.
I would also say that an issue with the story that you kind of alluded to is it does take a while to really get going and really show its hand in a lot of ways. A lot of it, especially the gift-giving interactions, are like a episodic comedy anime from 2003. So it could have really got itself going a lot faster.
I do have to say, I really enjoyed some of the Heavenly Delight ticket interactions. Like the first time, like there's this one where you have to go to a barbecue cook-off, and it's White and Green after their first fight, and they have to like basically play nice because they're back in Central Heaven, even though like Green did kill a neon in his first introduction in like the big temple. Like, so I don't know why they didn't fight then and there. It was just for the comedy of it, I guess.
Yes, mainly for the comedic tone of it, but also Neon Green is using White the entire time, apparently.
Right, yeah.
You know, he's apparently 4,000 IQ.
Yeah. So I guess that makes sense why he wouldn't kill him, because he does want him. He uses him in more ways than one.
He wants him.
He wants him, and he wants to use him, and he does. And everything that White does ends up just progressing Green's plans. And in this little scenario, I just thought it was so funny. Like him walking up to be like, all right, like who's at the barbecue here with me? And then there's Green sitting there, like just big burly chested, wearing an apron. And he's like, it's kind of awkward for a second. So what do you want? Like medium rare or what? It's just, I just thought it was good.
I also liked White and Mikey going and watching The Matrix. That
was
also a pretty good one.
And Mikey just needing an explanation for every scene. Like, wait, who's that guy? What's going on? Where's
That's Agent Smith.
Where's all the
That's
mobsters?
Still Agent Smith.
Yeah. Mikey is that viewer that you don't want in the theater with you.
It's just funny for some reason that this angel is so obsessed with mafia movies.
Yeah.
Staying on Mikey, I also liked at the end that his design in White's view is the cute little cat with the 6 sunglasses. And then at the very end, White sees his true angel form and he's still wearing the sunglasses.
Yeah. He's this like almost undescribable like shape of wings and golden halos and eyeballs. But
that's typically how angels are described as in the Bible, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and the joke is that in the Bible, especially Old Testament, angels are explicitly described as being otherworldly, almost incomprehensible creatures, usually with way too many eyeballs. And Mikey's form there is actually pretty Bible accurate, aside from the sunglasses, from my understanding.
So they're basically like Lovecraftian creatures.
Yes, that is what angels are described as in the Bible, and that's what they're going off of.
And they may or may not have worn Oakleys. We don't know.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't say they didn't wear Oakleys. So,
yeah.
actually, this was one of those things I kind of felt was a bit clever. It felt like, for one thing, they were making a lot of reference to Judaism specifically. And actually, there's a few Christianity references. Jesus, for example, is never mentioned, despite the fact they all think they're in heaven.
Right.
And the only time crosses come up, I think, are actually in a somewhat violent context, like at the temple.
It's more or less saying that the believers are Christians and they took over the Judaic heaven, basically, is my understanding.
Yeah, I guess so. I feel like it was kind of evoking more of like just a general Christianity view of heaven and the afterlife, but
that was because the believers took over heaven and created what it is now, where it has like these heavenly delights thing, right?
Yeah.
I think Dylan's right, because the Book of Life also was covered in the Star of David.
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah. And they refer to heaven as Sheol, which I think is the Jewish word for the afterlife, but doesn't really translate to heaven. It also fits with the fact that the believers got there and found that instead of necessarily being a moral like reward, instead all they have to do is learn to forgive both themselves and another person, and they essentially get the good ending. And it's not explicitly said even what the good ending entails in the very end. Like, they're not ascending to heaven plus necessarily, but their soul is just sort of at peace overall, which I think the believers thought that was a very disappointing idea and just wanted the nice stuff, which is why they took over Sheol.
Okay. I didn't really interpret it that way. Like the way I interpret it was with the mechanism that this game puts it in place for the afterlife and what God has, like what his system was that the souls of the dead come here to this plane of existence, Sheol, which isn't heaven or hell. And God's sitting there on his throne. He's got the book of life and the book of death. And then the souls come to him and then he judges them. And then if he deems them worthy, he puts their name in the book of life and then they ascend to heaven, which is what it was implied by this being Sheol and not heaven nor hell. Or if they're not worthy enough, the soul, then they get their name gets put in the book of death and they, I'm assuming, go to hell. But that made me think of like why the believers ended up wanting to take over this specific plane of existence by deposing God from his throne and taking over Sheol and using the book of death, I guess, because the book of death was the only one that they had possession of, because God hid the book of life in his hand, in his one fist. They used the book of death to remake Sheol in like their own image, like what their vision of what heaven was, which was this kind of like all-inclusive resort with really nice like beaches and stuff like that, which is like very like human, like a very limited view of what heaven really would be, and like from a human's experience.
Yeah, it's actually like it's really making fun of people thinking it's just gonna be fluffy clouds and everything good in the normal world is gonna be there. It's just like, okay, great.
And
That's
it's
fine,
also
I guess.
Everything good restricted to whatever time period you're from, like which is a modern time period. It's like, oh, in heaven, the ice cream is divine. It's so good. And then Like that's one of the delightful tickets. You go get ice cream, and it's like, oh yeah, this is good ice cream. But it's not like it's like this is literally the best ice cream I've ever had. It's like it fires all of my neurons, all of my taste buds are like lit up and basically in ecstasy, which is what my vision of what heavenly ice cream would be. But it's like I feel like it's all those little tidbits that the believers kind of drop. It kind of gets you. It got my mind thinking about like this heaven seems weird. It seems almost like not like it's good, but it's not as like close to paradise as I imagined it to be. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it seemed weird to me that the believers wanted to take control of Sheol itself when they could have just like gone and been, if they're true believers, they would have gone and been judged by God and passed on to real heaven and really experienced like like paradise and like bliss, right? Like, am I?
I'm not 100% sure, just because I don't know enough about Judaic and Christianity's differences with in regards to afterlife lore. I do still hold to the idea that it's like the new Christian believers are taking over this Judaic version of heaven somehow.
Yeah,
It's a very loose concept, but I'm definitely like that idea that Dylan put forward for sure.
right. That's a cool idea. I personally don't think I subscribe to that, but because I don't know. I just I'm really caught up on the plot point of the believers taking over Sheol for themselves when they could have just passed on to heaven and been in paradise or have their souls fulfilled. Basically, it seems pointless. Like it seems pointless.
I mean, they're not the smartest people. You get the sense though,
Yeah.
And the thing about the believers, they don't necessarily like the fact that they're true believers in air quotes are something that they describe themselves as, not something that is actually a feature that they have that God ordained them worthy of being there, and then they decided to take over heaven.
Right. That's
They
true.
were essentially just in the waiting room, disappointed in what they were told or how they're informed it all works, and decide to rebel and decide, well, have the best ice cream and keychains that look like swords and et cetera, et cetera.
Man, that was such a disappointing end reward for getting all the Heavenly Delight tickets. I was like expecting to get this cool new sword to like, I don't know if it would like make the base sword katana soul card like better or cooler looking, but I was expecting something. But that was such a good rug pull moment.
I knew that they were just gonna give you some bullshit like katana, like just some toy, because that's what every single thing was. It was like, oh yeah, you're doing a spa day, or you're gonna watch some baseball,
Or you're literally just gonna go work in some mines.
Oh yeah, that was the worst one, where you just go and dig for some fucking diamonds that you don't even get to keep.
It's not even like necessarily diamonds, it's just some sort of gems. It's like really not specific. It's just so yeah, I guess so. It's on track with the rewards being not what they're built up to be, and that's kind of like what this heaven is. It's not built up to be when you finally arrive there. And so I feel like it's all on theme, I mean, with you, Dylan, bringing up the point that you think the believers are the Christians coming into the Jewish heaven and kind of like ruining it for everybody, I guess. That doesn't really work with an idea that this game gave me with its narrative. Going through the game and hearing the narrative and everything, it made me think of something along the lines of like with the believers deposing God and taking over heaven and twisting it into what they think it should be. It made me think of it as a metaphor for how some of the structures of like modern day religion and the dogma of it imposes on people like something that's really fallen away from what the core of these faiths and philosophies in these religions like are truly, if you know what I'm trying to say. Like
I think that's actually a much better reading of the themes. For me, I only proposed that because I was trying to wrap my head around the clear Hebrew influences in the game. Another thing I noticed is that if you look at the writing in the Book of Life, it's Hebrew like formatting or font is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, well, the only Christian thing I noticed was the big cross stuck in the third temple.
Mm-hmm.
But I think your reading's much better, where it's more about the simplistic view of the afterlife and the sort of venality that the believers have compared to what the actual benefit of Sheol is, which is a place to learn to forgive yourself and other people for your past actions.
yeah, it was like people coming in and like corrupting the original idea. In this case, like God's version of Sheol, and like them coming and just twisting it to what they want it to be, and kind of missing the original point of the philosophy or the teachings of each religion and stuff. Like it made me think of the one passage in the Bible where Jesus mentions, I know this is Jesus, so you're talking about how it's the Christians like taking over the Jewish heaven, but Jesus saying something along the lines of, it's easier for a rich man to pass through the eye of a needle, or
You got it backwards there.
I did, yeah. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God.
It's good that you rephrase it, because you were about to say it's easier for a rich man to go through an eye of needle than a camel to get into the kingdom of God.
God
Get into
famously
heaven.
hates camels. Fuck those things.
That's why he made horses instead. He realized how much he messed up, and he's like, I can make this better.
Let me smooth out this
Yeah.
here. It's like just
Yeah, smooth out these lumps on the back here. There's one, sometimes two. Nah, flat back. Anyway, yes. So you get what I'm trying to say, though. Like, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. It made me think of like modern day mega churches and these pastors who lead them, like these congregations of like thousands of people, and how they're like selling these products to their congregation. It's all about like making money, and like they've kind of missed the core philosophy of their religions
well, not only
themselves.
that, but
Yeah.
they will also extol the virtues of competition, which is exactly what the Neons are doing. They're in a big competition to the death. And essentially these megachurches will also preach the value of like competing in like the free market or something like that.
Right.
And that's how it's done.
I guess we can go over the ending specifically if you want to.
Game good.
Yeah.
Everything else bad. No, I mean, I would say it's bad. It's just that, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know how I feel about the other stuff in the game.
The last podcast, I was the one who was down the game. Now Scott's allowed to be down on part of the game at least.
Just the narrative side of it. Scott, you don't like?
I don't know. I think it's just the writing for this particular style of, I don't know what you would call this style of writing. The visual novel style is just so cringy, and it's just like there's no such thing as subtext. It's like for some reason it feels like writers are just like, I don't understand how to do subtext or anything like that. I'm just gonna make it point blank that forgiveness good, revenge bad. And I'm going to keep hitting you over the head with that idea the entire time.
You can conquer any problem you face in life as long as you have your friends.
It kind of feels like it has like no subtlety to it, where it's like it can be hard to forgive people or even yourself, you know? I mean, I guess there is a little bit of difficulty for forgiving himself in the game, Neon White.
Yeah.
But like, whatever.
Yeah.
I just want to go fast.
I would point out that it's hard to convey subtlety when you have almost no animation, and instead you have one picture of White that they shake up and down and put little emotion things over the
Little
head.
anime like sweat droplets and stuff on.
Yeah, the anime blush shows up a couple times. One of them when Green looks at him or something and he's like embarrassed, he says, but all I thought was like, is he just being a little like, oh, he's looking at me?
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of does.
He is the senpai, and he did notice him.
Yeah, yeah. It does.
True.
It does restrict, like that format does restrict like how you can have the characters express their emotions in the moment. So I can see why you don't like that.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. I guess I was wondering if we wanted to discuss anything else in terms of gameplay as well, because we spent a lot of time on the story, when I think we all agree the meat of the game and the appeal is ultimately the incoming vogue of speedrunning as an explicit genre to video games. Speedrunning itself seems to be getting more and more mainstream and more attention. It's become, I think, something that most of the gaming community that isn't even that hardcore is aware of as a thing.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, there's a huge community for each game. Depending on the game, there's huge communities. Obviously, like older games have a bigger community, but I would say like GDQ, like Games Done Quick, is one of the biggest organizations that has really made speedrunning shine and has done a lot of good for the world's overall with their charity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like speedrunning has really blown up. Have you guys ever actually done any speedrunning for games?
Me personally, no.
Not for me, although I've considered it, maybe doing like a Dark Souls or Elden Ring speedrun or something.
Ah,
That'd be hard. The only games I've really done speedruns for are Limbo, and I chose that purely because I knew it was going to be kind of easy for my first speedrun because it's quite a simple game. There's not a lot of tricks to master. There's a few spots that are very difficult to master and like consistently get on every run, but it's like I also liked the idea of like even if I did not great, like the longest run I could end up doing was like an hour long, which is a nice comfortable length for a speed run. I find like anything longer is just too long for me.
yeah, totally.
The other one that I've done a speed run on technically is I played a lot of Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy.
Oh man, a rage
and that
game.
one was the rage game. I think my time was like sub 10 minutes for that game that I did. That was like my best time.
That's pretty good.
I thought so. I don't think I was going to do much better. I'm sure if I kept playing it over the years, I probably could have cut some time there. But like, it's just I looked up some people that are like, they did it in a minute. I'm like, there's no way I'm getting there.
Wow. Yeah. See, I played Getting Over It, but I never actually ended up beating it. I always meant to go back and try it out, but my time so far is infinite because I have not beaten it yet.
It's kind of funny thinking because like I don't know why we're talking about this game all of a sudden, but like the first time I played that game was like 7 hours long or something to beat it. And then like right after that, it was maybe half an hour to beat it.
Right.
Maybe a bit longer, but it's just funny just going back and just doing something over and over again. You just get so good at like recognizing the patterns and like, yeah, it's just, speedrunning is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll add is that I think Neon White's really nice because it makes speedrunning easy, which is, I think, a big barrier to, say, me trying to speedrun a game where it takes a lot of effort to, like, say, oh, I screwed this up in, say, Dark Souls 3. I've been playing for 3 hours. Now I have to boot out to the main menu, come back in, et cetera, et cetera. This game is like, oh, screw up, like F space, get back into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's nice and digestible and it introduces the concept. And now I'm actually excited to try some real speed running because I can see how rewarding it can be.
Totally. And it was definitely designed with speedrunning in mind. And me personally, I'm not super hot on speedrunning, but it's games like this that do make me more open to trying it out because they make it so easy. But I mean, if like we were saying before, with speedrunning becoming more and more of a common thing in games and being like a bigger community around it with GDQ and all that, I'd be cool with more games adding like a speedrunning function onto it. I wouldn't particularly care for it being like the focus of most games going forward from a developer standpoint.
I wouldn't want every game to focus on speed running. It's like, okay, Elden Ring, it's like timer's on, let's go.
yeah. Got the timer overlay just on by default in the game's HUD.
I will say one of the funny things about Neon White that happened was because I was playing basically like 10 hours in a day and it's quite an intense game. My fucking fingers and shoulders were just so stiff.
Yeah.
Like, oh my fucking God, I did this thing where I kind of dropped my neck forward and did a full rotation of my neck. And it was like a fucking, my neck just cracking.
Oh my God. Your body's seizing up. Your adrenal glands are just like shriveling into little raisins because you're just like,
oh, dude, it was just so intense. It was just such an intense game that I'm like, I let go of like my keyboard and mouse. I'm like, oh my God, I've got claw hands.
I will say the game really encourages such like motor habit learning that you close your eyes and you start seeing like parts of the game. I feel like it really got in my head. This game.
I close my eyes and all I see is big balloon demons.
It's the game of your dreams
or nightmares.
Yeah. I'd say overall, I really did enjoy the two aspects of this game, that being the gameplay itself and then the narrative side of it, as separate as they really did feel, like basically two separate games. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. It's definitely not my favorite game that we've played on the podcast, but yeah, I'd rate it like a solid 7.5, you know? Not that we've done any ratings before, but I'm just throwing that number out there.
You know me, I'm giving it a 1 because binary is the only rating system that I care about.
1 out of 0. Got it. Or 1
No,
out
it's
of
1. It's either 1 or 0, and
Yeah.
this is a 1.
Yeah.
No, I really like this game though. Even with less than stellar writing of the narrative, I really just enjoyed the frenetic action of going through the levels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting as a game because I'll play a game and say, okay, this was good, but this is an experiment for something in the future. Or this was good. I don't really want to play anything else like this again because it's like that was an interesting concept to explore. This one was really solid as a game. Narrative debate. You can have some debate on the virtue of the narrative.
Yeah.
But the game itself, I feel, is really solid on its own and could go in interesting directions. For example, one thing is that most of the enemies don't move, and having, say, a sequel where the enemies are a bit more active, I can see a lot of new directions. I can even just see a big modding community with this, making new levels.
I was actually just thinking about this morning. I was curious if there was a modding community or not, because, dude, making your own levels for this would be amazing.
Totally. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for listening. But before we go, I wanted to mention that next episode we'll be talking about The Forgotten City. It's a first-person narrative adventure game where you find an ancient Roman city in ruins where everyone has been turned to gold and you have to figure out what happened. It's available on PC, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, and PlayStation. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're listening on your favorite podcatcher, please rate and subscribe there for more episodes in the future. This has been Very Good Video Games. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Except for you.
Except for me, yes. Actually, just a quick little note, I will not be here next episode. I'm going on vacation with my lovely wife, Taylor. And then right when we get back, we're doing a quick move into a new apartment. So next episode, we're going to be having friend of the podcast and constant reference, Darren Bell, join us. Okay, yeah. Thanks again for watching. Goodbye.
Ta-ta.
Bye-bye, everyone.